Those photos are so scary. Good morning, Revolution, everybody, and welcome to our stream. Good morning, Pooja. Good morning, Dom. Good morning, Anita. Good morning, Pooja.
Morning.
Happy to see everybody. Um, let's take a few moments and find out how everybody's doing. Pooja, what's going on in your world?
Doing pretty good. I got a whole toddler over here who is insisting on joining us today. So my apologies if it's loud and screechy from over here. So
Oh no, she's more than welcome. She's more than welcome. She's
the next generation.
got a standing invitation. Dom, what's up in Philly? What's the party
Uh,
doing?
well, we just came back from the Labor Commission in-person meeting in Chicago, which was awesome and learned a lot. And it was good to see some familiar faces. And I think we're just getting ready for the Phils Dodgers tomorrow. Hopefully, we beat their butts. I was looking at the prices of their home games versus ours, and we're really pricing the working class out of these tickets. I paid an arm and a leg for mine, so it's worth it though. It's worth it. So that's what's going
Okay,
on in Philly.
okay, good luck with that. I wish y'all a winning streak. Anita, Ohio, what's up? I hear y'all got a
Uh,
candidate running for office. Are they gonna win?
we ha- we had a victory last night. We had there's a progressive guy and friend of the party in Clintonville, a neighborhood here, and he ran for area commissioner and he got 60 votes, and the next highest was 26. But the loser actually sued and wanted to overturn the election. So last night there was a big dramatic meeting where actually he was unanimously affirmed as the next area commissioner. So we were all thrilled about that, and just a lot of different people coming together to support him and his bid for that area commission seat. So that was really, up and up for us last night.
Congratulations on that. Sometimes it's not enough just to win. You got to fight for the victory because they try to
Mhm.
overturn it. Let's hope that
That's
there's
right.
not a
And the
recall.
Franklin County Democratic Party is no machine to be laughed at. So
Is that right? Okay, you're
Yeah,
from
Pooja
Toronto.
knows.
You know, you know. Run, comrade, run. That's the slogan of the moment. And by the way, I'm going to be running for office in New York. Our time has come, and I feel like we might be able to do a pretty good job. We're meeting with the New York comrades in a couple of weeks, and when we decide, you all who are listening, streaming audience will be the first to know. So watch
Excellent.
out for the announcement in a couple of weeks. We are streaming on Twitch, on Facebook, on X, and on here on YouTube. And today we're only 80 subscriptions short of getting 15,000 on YouTube. So please, if you like what you're hearing, subscribe. If you like what you're hearing, like, click the arrow up and share it with your friends, share it with your neighbors. Please share it with your family. Help a comrade out. We got to work together to make this thing happen. Um, let's get started. Today we're talking Antifa. Who's afraid of Antifa? We're talking Red Scare. We are talking an generalized attack on democracy. We're talking you're either with us or against us politics. So, according to an executive order that Mr. Trump recently signed, if you are anti Christian, whatever the hell that means, or if you're anti family, uh, if you're anti capitalist, we're coming at you. Or you could just be an average working person coming home from work, you know, and you're under attack. That's what happened in Chicago the other day when one of them Black Hawk helicopters came down on a building in Chicago, allegedly looking for some gang members, and they arrested children. zip ties. They arrested women. They arrested old people, black, white, Latino, 100 people, locked them all up, you know? Um, I'm not making it up. I bullshit you not. Anita, what the hell's going on in this country?
I, I don't know. I mean, it's big lies. I'm just stunned at. I've been watching the Portland situation, and the idea that they can justify, or they're trying to justify sending troops in when there's really absolutely no need for them, and they're justifying it with footage from 5 years ago. I saw a statement by the mayor of Portland. It was just outraged that they can take, one city block, something that happened on one city block out of 145 square miles of Portland, and show footage from 5 years ago and use this to show that it's a war ravaged city. Portlandiers really are pushing back on that. It's not a war ravaged city. There's nothing. It's completely out of touch with reality. It's like, the definition of psychosis. This Trump administration seems to be out of touch with reality and facts on the ground.
Pooja, what's your take? I mean, they train troops on U.S. soil going after citizen, non-citizen. They don't care, seem like.
Yeah, I think they're just making whatever excuse they can to lock up whoever they want to, basically. I think the rule of law is certainly over in this country. I think a lot of well meaning people, I feel like I've said this every time I've been on the show, but a lot of well meaning people continue to hopefully rely on the rule of law and the Supreme Court and this idea that the legal system is going to save us. But the legal system, I think we really have to come to terms with the fact that it does not exist anymore. What we know as the rule of law does not exist anymore. And I think we really also have to come to terms with the fact that we are much further along in this process than the media will ever show, than anyone will ever talk about. And the fact that Americans, working class people, are as we are really held hostage to our jobs, to our paychecks, to our ability to have a roof over our heads. And this thing is the thing that's going to make us go further along in this process than I think any of us are ready to talk about. I think things are much worse than we know and much worse than we're willing to admit. And it's really time for us to ramp up how we are thinking about fighting back.
We're going to measure that in just a moment, Pooja. I want to get your take once again. But Don, look here. I'm talking Black Hawk helicopter. Like the ones that they use in that movie, Black Hawk Down in Somalia, like they use in Afghanistan. But it's not the first time that they have used those kinds of tactics. You're from Philly
Mm-hmm.
or the suburbs of Philly. You remember what happened with Move, when they blew up a whole block, knocked down 3 buildings based on a bullshit pretext? Is that what's coming?
I want to say no. I want to say that couldn't happen and it wouldn't happen, but the way that this administration has ramped up and accelerated their not just economic attacks on working people, but psychological attacks on working people and all on all oppressed people in this country really points in that direction. Unfortunately, and I think we can't underestimate this is psychological and mental warfare that they're waging on us. It's the attacks aren't happening yet, but surely they want you to know and to think that they very well will do it and can do it. That's exactly why. Trump, he admitted it himself that he would do it. He told the military to use full force. So I think that they're more than willing to do that, and we can't just uh, we have to take Trump at his word and not just pretend that he's just some demented old man. I think we ought to, take his word. He means what he says. So it's really frightening, the times that we're living in.
I mean, he may be old. Ain't no maybe about it. The boy's old, you know, and he may be demented. Ain't no two ways about that either. But you're right. You got to take the boy's word seriously. Anita is getting funky out there. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even free speech is under attack. You know what they did with Kimmel, But there was pushback, big time, all across the country. And he got his show back. And I saw just yesterday that Jane Fonda revived a committee set up by her old man, Henry Fonda. What's it called? The Committee for the First Amendment. And several hundred, Hollywood type stars, producers, writers, actors, so on, have signed up for it. Pooja says it's much worse than it is being led on. Much worse than being led on. Let's have a little lightning round. Measure it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being we're okay, and 10 is off the hook. Time to pack up. What do you think? Where are we?
I'd given it. Oh, I would give it an 8, I think. I mean, I
8.
think that, yes. I mean, I think we still have some room left to protest and to fight back, but I think we have to be really um, careful and vigilant about what the plans are for the future, especially the plans for the election um, period next year when the midterms are happening. I can see deployment of forces on the street in blue cities to try to intimidate people. I mean, it could be. We just have to be vigilant and do everything we can to quell it at this point.
Now,
I know
Pooja,
that's not lightning, but
I hear you. Pooja, you already intimated that you think it's bad. 1 to 10. How bad
I
is
think
it?
I think I agree that it's probably at an 8 to 8.5. I have concerns about the sanctity of any elections moving forward, given what has happened with Elon Musk and the other tech bros. I have concerns about just even the fact that we will have any sort of system in these blue states that hasn't been severely neglected or severely attacked from the federal government. I think it's really going to come down to how much a blue state is willing to fight back against the federal government. Now, you have a whole range of that, right? You have the Gavin Newsom California approach, but I live in Colorado, which is a pretty purple state. Honestly, we have a Democratic governor, but he's a pretty libertarian billionaire Democratic governor, and he's already working with ICE to give them people's contact information that he's been sued for, and it's a whole gamut of where the different responses are coming from. So I don't think we even have a solidified game plan of how the blue states are going to respond or blue cities are going to respond. I think we are way behind in planning for what happens moving forward. I think the stuff that's happening, like Homeland Security, like ICE coming and helicoptering in on these children and zip tying them in the Chicago building, like you were talking about, that's only the beginning. I think lots of things like that are gonna keep happening, are probably happening now that we aren't hearing about in the media as much. And I think we really have to start getting serious about what fighting back looks like, what the repercussions of fighting back looks like. I'm not gonna lie, it's concerning in our own personal family. It's probably going to be concerning for all of us on this call. I hope I'm not trying to be too hyperbolic in what I'm saying, but things are much worse than I think we are discussing openly anywhere.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. Dom, I'm on the one hand, I'm less worried than I was in February. I knew ugly was coming, but there wasn't no protest. But then we had April 5th, and then we had May Day, and I was really encouraged by May Day, and then we had the No Kings, you know, and so and then there was the March on Wall Street, It wasn't that big. I mean, it was about 10,000 people, but it was very militant. And it was the first event that was undertaken against Trump at the initiative of the civil rights movement. Sharpton, King family, so on and so forth. So, 1 to 10, one being, you know, let's go fishing, drink some Kool-Aid, not talk about it. 10 being, I'm going to the bar and getting drunk and forgetting about the whole thing before I
Yeah,
pass.
I think I'm right there. Everyone else, where I would say like, on a good day, 7.5. On a horrible day, maybe 8.5, anywhere in that range. And I think what's encouraging is that but just like you said, Joe, that there are protests and boycotts and really exciting campaigns going on. And I think we need to continue to sort of hit them where it hurts, where their pockets and their political power. Like the campaign in New York with Mamdani and Plattner in Maine and here in Philly with Chris Rabb. We need to continue to contest the political power of the far right themselves and also the Democrats who, refuse to take this threat seriously. And we also need to, put financial pressure on the capitalist class and the owners and billionaires and CEOs who are capitulating to Trump's, whims, like when they got Kimmel off the air and Disney lost lots of money and the Target boycott and them losing lots of money. So I think we need to continue to in this stage right now continue to hit them where it hurts, but we also need to think about we consider the seriousness of the threat. I know. I assume, and I think it's a correct assumption that Trump will be in Philly for the 250th anniversary or birthday of our country, and I'm already starting to have conversations with allies in the movement about what are we going to do, how are we going to protest his presence in our city, knowing that our mayor is either going to throw her hands up and let him do what he wants or work alongside with him. And these are conversations that we need to have. It's next year in July, but it's never too early, especially with this Joker in the White House and all his his goons and his goon squad. So
Somebody just made a comment, I believe it was one of our comrades, Cameron, that they're not as strong as they think they are. That actually, this might be a sign of weakness. Do you think that's true, Anita?
Yeah, I think they're really worried about the 26 midterms. And if the Democrats take the House again, then they're going to be turning the tables on the Trump administration and investigating all kinds of things that have been going on, from extrajudicial killings in the Caribbean to the corruption that the Trump family is just milking the world economy for money from their personal coffers. So I think, I think Cameron is right that fascism is not an inevitability. We still have some room to fight back. And I think people are fighting back on a lot of different fronts: legal, street protest, just, getting information out that contradicts the lies that are coming down from our president and vice president. Our vice president seems to be especially mendacious. Is that the right word? He's a liar, but just brazen about it. So yeah, I think we shouldn't overestimate their strength. They're really desperate, and that's why they're doing taking these kind of measures. But we have to fight back against it every step of the way, definitely.
Mendacious, mendacity. That means you're a lying fool.
That's
you
right.
just you just a damn lie. Pooja, I see you shaking your head. I mean, some people have a point because they take a character like Cash Patel or the assistant deputy. Both of them podcasters. Both of them don't really have no experience, and they're like, "This is a joke." You think that's a reasonable way to look at it?
I think this regime is a joke? Yes. But do I think they have power and they're going to do everything they can to continue to consolidate their power and maintain their power, just like any authoritarian body does with power? Yes, I also think that is the case. Yes, they're weak. They're not as strong as they think, and I think we don't know really the extent of what's going to happen, and I don't think that we should look at this moment and think that they are weak and think that they don't know what they're doing and think that our traditional fail safes are going to protect us. I think that's not the way to prepare for the moment that we're in. Again, not to be hyperbolic, but I do think things are heading down a very specific trajectory. I think everything that's happening is indicative and has happened before in trajectories towards fascism. So, yeah, I mean, it's funny because they're stupid, and a thing that irritates me is that, of course, the American system is going through fascism in the dumbest way possible. It's like it seems very like specifically American that this would happen this way. Um, but I also don't think that we should view it lightly. Again, to Anita's point, yes, they are concerned about midterms. I'm concerned about what they do with their concern. I'm concerned about, do we have sanctity in elections anymore? I'm concerned about, like, are people just going to continue to be kicked off voter registrations, which is happening all over the country, right? So if you haven't looked at your voter registration recently, you should, to make sure that you're still on the rolls, to make sure that you are still counted as a human being. There's just a lot of different it's a multi-pronged approach that fascism takes, right? So we have to really make sure we're looking at every single prong and not taking any of them too lightly. I think that's a concern that I have. A lot of people are looking at this moment and sort of making jokes or taking things lightly or thinking, oh, it's not that bad. But I think we really have to be clear-eyed and conscious about the fact that we really need people power, we need organization, and we need to come together and strengthen the ties that we have amongst ourselves. Do you know your neighbors? Do you know the people you live in the building with? Do you know the people that you work with? These are the ties that we really need to start strengthening as we move forward in this moment, because it's going to be really these people that we get to rely on in our community to help us.
Even if we have an election, there's no guarantee that they're going to honor the results. My guess is, they're going to come up with some kind of pretext, to declare a state of emergency. Just like they use the pretext of crime to send in troops. The cities like DC, Chicago, LA, where crime has, by all accounts, been dropping uh, significantly. And one of the prongs, and an ideological prong, but maybe it's more than that Pooja referred to, is Antifa. Antifa. Now, comrade, I've been out here a long time. You know, I ain't never met or seen in a coalition, gone to a meeting with any organization or any individual that belongs to something called Antifa. Have you?
No, and I'll say just quickly that I think that the MAGA coalition is weak in that there are lots of fissures that can be exploited and have been, like, such as when Trump and Elon Musk had beef, or when the Epstein Files thing, which is still ongoing, but was the height of it just some weeks ago. So those weaknesses do exist, but these jokers, and I mean, I don't want to minimize like what they are, but they're the biggest snake oil salesmen, biggest con artists that I've ever seen. Well, they're the biggest. I mean, to a certain extent, lots of politicians are con artists and snake oil salesmen, but these guys really do sell the American people who are hurting and not doing well a bunch of bullshit. and they know it. Just as you said with the Antifa thing, they know damn well that Antifa is not an organization. It's not an organization to be classified as a terrorist organization. And what I believe is that this is a way they're doing this on purpose to as the foundation for investigating and suppressing anyone who disagrees with them. Anyone who disagrees with them, anyone who fights back against them, it's going to be labeled Antifa and therefore subject to, terrorism charges. I think that's exactly what they're doing. We're talking about the United States Intelligence Agency. They know damn well that Antifa is not an organization. And this, again, like I said, this is just the framework that they're using to be able to, going forward, especially around the time of the midterms, when people, probably will be out protesting and will be out organizing to say, oh, no, this person is Antifa, they're a terrorist, and you should either disregard what they say or we're going to lock them up and do whatever and disappear them and get them off the streets. I think that's exactly what they're doing. Again, like Pooja said, I understand that, Trump says goofy stuff all the time, and Kash Patel looks like a goofball, and Pete Hegseth looks like a goofball and a dickhead and a loser. But these people know very well what they're doing. It's not by accident. They're not just stumbling along the way. They're doing it's very concerted and it's on purpose.
Anita, what do you think? I mean, Antifa is a acronym, ain't it, for anti-fascist?
Right.
Anti-fascist, I saw a wonderful photo yesterday of two grandmas knitting, and on their shirt it was spelled out Aunt Tifa. Aunt Tifa. Why are they targeting an organization that don't exist?
Or it's not an organization, but I think it is a feeling that that appeals to some people. It who among us is not against fascism? Of course, I'm an anti-fascist. Um, so but it doesn't make any sense. I do to answer your question. Your previous question, there is someone who comes to rallies in Columbus sometimes with an Antifa flag, and seems to be alone and doesn't come with an organization and doesn't belong to an organization. And just, people hate fascism and they want to express that they hate fascism. We've had a lot of problems in Ohio, not so much this year, but last year with going up towards the election with Nazis who openly march. And we didn't even have any real anti-fascists at those. There were counter protests, but they didn't express themselves as anti-fascists or Antifa. It is not an organization. It's just a feeling, and there's some, young people who might engage in kind of a romantic view of anti-Nazi actions in Germany or Italy that have idea that they're recreating this, but it's not an organization. It's individual feelings of being against Nazis. Yeah.
And another issue is this throwing around the word terrorist, I mean, to me, a terrorist is an attack, armed attack against civilians, military attack, blow something up, shoot somebody, that kind of thing. It's not standing in a demonstration between, a person in a wheelchair, a person holding a child, and some Nazis or some right wingers. Come on, give me a break. Pooja, you're a trade unionist. Come back to you. Trump has ended collective bargaining for 1.3 million workers. And today, because of the government shutdown, the head of the OMB is likely to announce tens of thousands of more layoffs or even firings. They're likely to gut agencies. I mean, the AFL-CIO held an emergency meeting of their presidents on Tuesday. They had a meeting with the state federations Wednesday. They're urging their affiliates to call, lobby, members of Congress, hold protests. All of that is great, particularly if they do it in the form of collective action. It's a good step. But is it enough?
Yeah, I mean, that requires like broader conversation about like what is the overall strategy that the left is taking, right? I think not to belabor the point of what we were just talking about, but I think Antifa is just being used as a lens to disappear anybody that they don't like, right? So I think something to consider is that putting ourselves out there in a very public and loud manner is something that we need to do, and it's going to come at a higher risk than I think a lot of us have been used to for a long time, right? um, in terms of the trade union movement, right now there is no NLRB, right? The NLRB is frozen. And I don't know, we haven't talked about this, but if you go onto different government websites like the USDA, the NLRB, all of these different government websites, many of them have a disclaimer that the radical left Democrats have shut down the government, right? I'm curious sort of to see how that messaging is landing with people. A lot of obviously what's happening is really based on propaganda and how working class people who are reading headlines and really talking to their work coworkers and neighbors. It depends on sort of how they're responding to these things, right? So it's great that trade unionists, that the AFL-CIO, that the unions, we're all trying to gather together and fight back and hold our mass organizations and trying to hold this administration accountable for what they're doing. Um, but that's a pretty small portion of the American working class population, right? So I'm actually like a little bit more curious about like how are we going to use our institutions to really message to people that are not already within our ranks, right? That's always a question with the labor movement anyway. Like I feel like in the labor movement, we're always trying to, there's all these turf wars and jurisdictional wars where we're always like fighting over the small pieces of the pie together. I think in this moment, it's really up to us as a trade union movement, as all political organizations. It's up to us to really start expanding beyond just our ranks. We need to start talking to like I keep saying, really need to start talking to our neighbors, need to start talking to our coworkers, need to start making sure people understand exactly where we are in this moment. It's very difficult as an American to be politically engaged, and the government is really relying on the fact that it is difficult for Americans to be politically engaged. So I view the role of organizations, of trade union movement, of all of these things as the vehicle to ensure that people understand what their rights are, what's happening in this moment, what they can do, that there's still hope, right? Like hope is a really necessary thing, I think, to take on in this moment. And we have to be really clear-eyed about the fact that things are going down very fast. And we have to be honest about that, which I think a lot of people are looking to the elected Democrats specifically right now. And I think, they're fighting back a little bit, but I think there's a real dearth of messaging, real dearth of, like, for example, I'm still getting 8 million text messages every day with people from the DCCC or other political campaigns asking me for money, which to me is like the greatest, like, stop asking me for money right now. You guys have so much audacity. What are you doing to fight this shit, right? Because that's what I want to know. I don't want to give you money endlessly so that you can just put it in your coffers to show end of quarter fundraising money. Like, that does not matter to me. What are you doing to actually fight this shit? And the answer for a lot of electeds and a lot of organizations is we're doing nothing, right? So I think I would really like to see what are we doing? What is the messaging? What is the strategy? All of us need to come together and start coming up with a broader fight back strategy, one that understands that no matter who we are, no matter if we claim the title of Antifa or not, we are going to be labeled Antifa because we are inherently anti-fascist, right? The other thing is we have to clarify what fascism means. The right wing is doing a really good job of flipping this narrative of fascism and calling the left fascist, calling Democrats fascist. That's bullshit, as we all know. That's ridiculous. And to this comrade's point, that Trump has been bragging online about how he literally said, I've been expecting more of a fight back and they're just kind of letting me do it. When the fascists are out there saying they're just letting us do it, we know something is really going wrong and we're not fighting back in the way that we need to. Anyway, so all of this to say, we need to do more.
We need to do more. They need to start using that money to
Yeah.
organize the unorganized. I think that's what you're saying,
Right.
Now, Dom, you were in Chicago at the Labor Commission. Talk to us a little bit about what kinds of things were talked about there, what kinds of campaigns where party members are involved in doing precisely that, organizing the unorganized.
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest points is that, and it's necessary. I spoke when I spoke at the labor conference that 10% of the American workforce is unionized, and yet support for unions, support for organized labor is somewhere between 60 and 70. I think like 64 or 68, something like that. So I mean, it's on the one hand you can get discouraged about it, but on the other hand, it's encouraging to know that more than half of the country supports organized labor, supports unions. More than half of the country supports organized labor over Trump, or not over Trump, but there more people support organized labor and support unions than support Trump, and that's a very very encouraging thing. And we need to do exactly that: is organize unorganized, not just certain industries, but also I think organize these people who support labor but aren't a part of unions. Think about you know mass organizations that do support labor, and Cameron and I, when we were there, talked about perhaps the Labor Commission, looking into an organization that not only helps unorganized workers who do want to organize, because we have a lot of talented and knowledgeable labor activists and organizers in the party, but also those affiliates. Like think about how many union households there are, where one worker in the household is a part of a union, or maybe both workers in the household are a part of a union. I think those are sort of the things we need to think about and sort of expand, what we believe to be not a trade unionist, but someone who supports labor, and really activate those people and get them to understand, their stake in all of this.
I heard that the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists is calling for a national day of solidarity, and they're trying to get the AFL-CIO to uh, endorse that. Did that come up at the meeting? And what might that look like, Dom?
It did, and I know here in Philly, some of our comrades are bringing these up in their union meetings, and getting their unions to pass resolutions, supporting this. So I think that is really the next step for members, is to especially those in unions, to get their unions to take up and pass resolutions on this, and getting them all also all on the same page of supporting something like this.
We need to go to the unions. We need to go to the churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, community
Mhm.
organizations, women's groups, LGBTQ, everybody and their mama and daddy, cousin, next door neighbor, because all of these are organizing tools. It's getting to know your neighbor, it's getting to know the small grocery store, bodega down the street. It's getting to know the person, people that you work out with in the gym, and so on and so forth. And that's part of organizing. And one day you march, the next day you go knock on your council member's door, your state rep's door, and the day after that you start doing voter registration, and the day after that you vote, and then the 2 days after that you go on strike or you go to a demonstration. And these are the ways that we begin to spread the organizing wealth. Anita, speaking of organizing wealth,
Mhm.
our national committee meeting is coming up next weekend.
Mhm.
Um, going to gather party leaders from around the country. What's on the agenda? What issues are being taken up? You're the party's organizational secretary.
Oh
Can you
boy.
can you give us a glimpse of what y'all
Put
going
me
to put down at? Huh?
Sure, put me on the spot, Joe. That's fine. Um, well, what is on my mind right now is October 18th. You know, is the next Saturday after our NC meeting in New York. So I think we really want to try to get everybody out for that October 18th, and not just ourselves, but also our organizations that are our allies, like one group that is important in that what Pooja was talking about, getting community support and going outside the ranks of trade unions for support, is workers centers where that are interested in, that's their raison d'etre, is to organize the unorganized, and especially focusing on immigrants. So I think that kind of getting those kind of organizations to mobilize their folks for October 18th and really have a the broadest possible representation to come out for that rally. I think this one should be a big one, because things are just, you know, really escalating, as Pooja said, so fast that we really need to mobilize and at least show our support, show our lack of support for what Trump is doing in the United States. So, yeah, in the meantime, it would be great, and I think we should still try to pass resolutions to get a nationwide Union Solidarity Day, to march on Washington. If it's not going to be in the fall, in the spring or sometime, we definitely need to do that. But in the meantime, we go out everywhere in the United States on October 18th.
October 18th is the next important date for the broad democratic movement. Y'all had a big turnout in Philly at No King's Day. You know, you think it's going to be bigger down this time around?
I hope so. I hope that it can be bigger and like I said, like just mobilize and organize the broad democratic forces, because I think that like we were discussing earlier, that the Trump coalition and MAGA forces are really loud, but I don't think that they're as big as they are projecting. And all of these people who are feeling like, I don't know what to do, I don't know how we move from here. You know, I am struggling to pay bills, I'm struggling to feed my family. You know, these are the people that we need to bring into action and move into action. So I hope that you know the political forces here in Philly can really mobilize these people, because they certainly exist.
And I hope it takes place, big towns and small. I hope it takes place on the East Coast and in the Midwest. I hope it takes place, Pooja, in your neck of the woods of Colorado, you know. Uh, and I hope it influences people who are influenced by MAGA, you know, because these cuts to Medicaid, you know, the fact that medical insurance rates are going to go up, you know, if the GOP gets its way with this government shutdown. That's going to hurt everybody, you know. One guy who lives in West Virginia wrote to me this morning. He said his next door neighbor, who's on insulin, he said they got a notice this morning that the price doubled. Already, it's starting to happen. Let's take our mailbag question before we end this very interesting discussion. Somebody wrote in this morning, I saw in the Amsterdam News, y'all, that's the African American press uptown in Harlem, Amsterdam News, that homelessness has reached depression levels. They ask, isn't it time for a New Deal 2.0? Is that the solution? Who'd like to take the first shot? Or do we need to go further? Anybody?
I'll chime
Go
in,
ahead,
Joe,
Leah.
because I've been thinking about the military budget. In last year, the military budget was $900 billion. And if we took, there have been bills introduced in Congress just take $1 billion out of that, and devote it to housing, or $100 billion and devote it to housing. We really are having a housing crisis in this country, and it's just not only are people homeless, but they're also spending half their income on their house or their apartment. And the private equity companies buying up all the real estate and then selling it back to us or renting it back to us at inflated prices. This is just something that cannot be sustained. It's a crisis, and it's especially affecting young people right now, who are trying to embark on their own lives. So it's a real problem, but I think we have to get that military budget and reduce it, and turn it to real people's human needs, like housing.
Pooja, New Deal 2.0, is that enough?
Well, let's for a moment go back to New Deal 1.0. Let's remember that the reason why the New Deal was passed was not out of the goodness of Roosevelt's heart, right? It was from the pressure of the people, from the pressure of the working class, from the pressure of the union strikes that were happening. So I think it's no coincidence that the NLRB has been attacked to the point that it has been in this new era of fascism that we live in, taking away people's rights to organize, taking away the NLRB's ability to hold employers accountable for their behavior. We're going into the same predicament that led us to getting the New Deal in the first place. However, we've had a long period of time with workers being used to having governing agencies backing them up. Unfortunately, we no longer have that. And I think moving forward, we are not going to have the NLRB in the same framework that we have it now. So I think it is time for a New Deal 2.0 and even further. And I think we have to be really clear-eyed about what it means to be getting to that point. It was not I'm not, let me just be very clear here. I'm not calling for political violence. Very important to reiterate that in this particular moment. But a lot of what gave us the New Deal was the ability and the willingness. We were out there killing bosses, right? And so the bosses were like, okay, we have to do something to make sure that the workers are not killing us, right? I'm not suggesting that we do that. I'm not suggesting that that was the right move, but it did take scaring bosses and the governing class and the ruling class to a level where they were concerned about what we were going to do next. And we may have to figure out how we become more terrifying and more threatening to the ruling class before we get to a New Deal 2.0.
Dom, what do you think?
Yeah, I
New
think
Deal 2.0?
we need a New Deal 2.0, and I also think we need a Reconstruction 3.0. We need a third Reconstruction. We need legislation that, of course, we need the sort of economic fixes because people are struggling. All people are, all workers in this country are really struggling to make ends meet and feed their families. But we also need to consider how much damage that this MAGA movement has done politically, socially, and culturally in our country. And I mean, I know other countries in Europe have programs where they look at radicalized youth and help them out, and that certainly exists. I mean, look at all the school shootings and mass shootings that happen, and they wind up being right wing freaks who got radicalized on the internet. That's a real issue. I mean, of course, like we want to get guns off the streets and have gun legislation, but we can't underestimate the social and aspect of those sorts of things. And I think we need to really think about what sort of legislation or what sort of political action can be taken to really get a hold on that, because I was a school nurse. I worked in the school system, and it's there, and it's bad. It's young kids, 10, 11, 12, saying horrible things about women, saying horrible things about people of color, horrible things about immigrants. And that is a, it's not going to go away just when Trump is not in office anymore. It's not just going to poof and be gone. So those are things I think we also have to think about, and what the political and legislative solutions can be, and how it can be packaged, and how what slogans we can think about to move it forward.
You know what I think? We started off today's program on the question of who is afraid of Antifa. And you know who's afraid of Antifa? Because Antifa means anti-fascist. They are. And it's not just Trump. And it's not just Kash Patel. And it's not just Pam Bondi and that fool of a vice president they got. You know, there's an entire section of the ruling class, you know, and they are afraid because we are the many and they are the few, you know, and they know that in their drive to maintain their profits rate, to 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 maximize profits, that they are creating a almost universal wall of opposition. You know, yes, it's true that they've gutted the NLRB. They're gutting the Department of Labor. It's gone from 160 employees or something like that to 10, you know? And they know that we're going to fight back in massive ways to change that. And the point that was made that the NLRB is no, we have to go back to the old organizing efforts before the National Labor Relations Act was established. You know, we didn't have the right to strike then. We didn't have collective bargaining then. But we were able to organize the mass production industries in auto, in steel, in electric, and coal because we took the fight to the stage. We struck, we occupied, we sat in, you know, we boycotted, you know, we hit them where it hurts, and it's beginning to hit them where it hurts. That's what happened with the Tesla boycott. That's what's happening with the Target boycott. Their profit margins are down. That's what happened with Disney. That's why they put Kimmel back on the air, because tens of thousands, maybe more, hundreds of thousands were boycotting them, canceling their subscriptions. You know what I'm saying? And that's what has to happen this time around. And I think we need to go further than a New Deal 2.0. We got to go further than a third Reconstruction. We need anti monopoly. We need to break up the monopolies, you know, and we need to put in place a new people's working class government, anti monopoly government that will make that happen. And I know it don't seem likely now, but you know, things can happen quickly with blinding speed, you know, warp speed, if you're a Star Trek fan. And I am. And that day is coming. It is time for the Resistance 2.0. And there is indeed rising tide of struggle. This is our National Committee report, fresh off the press. Write to us at cpusa@cpusa.org and get your copy. Thank all of you this morning. Appreciate your comments, your insights. You took the conversation to another level. Until we meet again, stay strong, stay safe, comrades. Stay in the fight. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.